Is the time for talk over as President Trump continues to try to make a deal with Iran's regime? And in Lebanon, Iran and Hezbollah continue to launch attacks. So is it time for the U.S. and Israel to restart military action against Iran's regime and finish the job? Joining us now from Jerusalem to break it down are Yair Pinto and Mati Shoshani, co-host of Boots on the Ground, seen right here on TBN every Thursday night at 9:30 p.m. Eastern Time. Guys, great to see you as always. Thanks for joining us from Jerusalem. Mati, I want to start with you. Look, President Trump said yesterday that essentially he's willing to absorb some of these smaller attacks from Iran, what he called smaller attacks, basically targeting Kuwait and Bahrain with missiles and drones. He's willing to absorb that, it seems, in hopes of still forging a deal with Iran's regime. But Mati, is any sort of credible deal with Iran even possible at this point? And does the regime even want a deal?
Well, first of all, Eric, it's good to be with you as always. And to what Trump said yesterday, I found it to be very humorous. He was asked, what does a ceasefire look like with Iran? And he said, well, in that neighborhood, he said it was a decrease or a reduction in the intensity. And that's really what it is. It's a extended war of attrition more than it is a real ceasefire. And I think at this point, it should be clear to many people that there's a reality in which there is no agreement. Not today, not tomorrow, not in the foreseeable months. Why? The gaps between the United States and Israel are enormous. The United States and Iran are enormous. The unity between Israel and America is enormous. But it's huge. On every big topic, there's not an agreement and nothing near it. Iran says, we want the nuclear, we want the ballistic, we want the proxies, we want to sell oil to whoever we want, and we want to remain the mega terrorist of the region. The United States says, take all of that and reverse it. And there really is no middle ground when those are the starting terms to the negotiation.
Yeah.
And more than that, there's a big question that I think is looming over everyone's head, which is who in Iran is actually able of making an agreement, or able of reaching an agreement? They're a weak regime. They say no to everything, which is a sign of weakness, not of strength. One person comes out, President Pezeshkian says something, someone in the IRGC who is identified as the members of the so-and-so says, no, you have no authority to speak.
Yeah.
And he says, well, I've had enough of this. And they say, no, Masoud, don't quit. So it's this really bizarre situation,
Yeah.
where it seems like no one's really able to reach an agreement in Iran. And Trump has said, he said in the past, we can live without an agreement. And that seems to be what we're living with right now.
Yeah. Trump is waiting them out, essentially. But I wonder, Yair, if the Iranian regime is waiting Trump out, in essence, saying, look, we'll string him along until 2028, early 2029. Once Trump leaves office, we can go back to our old ways, developing nuclear weapons, building up the ballistic missiles, et cetera. On that front, Yair, look, Iran, as I mentioned a minute ago, they've been attacking Kuwait, Bahrain, the UAE on a consistent basis. What's Iran's game here? Why would it attack? A lot of people ask, why is it attacking its fellow Muslim nations in the region?
Well, I would start with it's a spiritual war. And for them, in their ideology, they need to cause as much damage, as much destruction for kind of the world to come to the latter days in their beliefs. So you need to start with this understanding that it's a spiritual war. And according to their radical Shiite doctrine, they need to just open the gates of hell towards everybody around them, especially Israel and the United States, in order for their redemption to come and for them to continue with their faith. So
Yair, great point. I don't mean to interrupt you, my friend, but the Mahdi, they call him, or the 12th Imam, this Islamic Messiah figure, they believe they can usher in his return in a time of great global chaos. You make a great point. This is key to their ideology and why they're doing what they do.
Yeah, so if you come from this understanding, then they don't care about peace. They think this is an opportunity to actually fulfill their prophecies. But if you look at it from a more pragmatic point of view, yes, you are right. They have a longer lifeline. They can withstand because they don't care if their population is suffering or not. They can withstand an extra 2 years. The country will suffer severely, but those in power, which is the Revolutionary Guards and not even the parliament of Iran, they can hold on for longer and they can outlive Donald Trump in terms of his political career in the White House. And also we can see that the Gulf states, the oil prices, they're all pressuring the United States and the West. So that's one angle that they can play. But on the other hand, they're losing their leadership. They're afraid of their own population. The economic pressure that the U.S. is enforcing against them is already having its effects on the ground. So it's kind of a double game, and everybody's waiting to see which side will fold first. But if you talk about negotiations, nowhere it's moving forward, because the topics of the U.S. are get rid of your nuclear bombs, and then the Iranians are saying, no way we get rid of the nuclear bombs. Stop funding terrorism in the Middle East. No way we are stopping to fund terrorists in the Middle East. And it seems like nobody's talking even the same language. So I think that a direct confrontation is kind of the only option, at least against the leaders, and to find the uranium.
Gentlemen, President Trump and Prime Minister Netanyahu apparently had a very maybe heated, some would say, phone call earlier this week over Lebanon in particular. Now, I want to talk about Lebanon in a minute, but Mati, Bibi and Trump, look, they have a great relationship, certainly, but of course, all allies and friends have disagreements from time to time. The mainstream media has been hyping this up like there's some big clash between them. Do you put much stock in that? It seems at the end of the day, Trump and Bibi are essentially on the same page. Is this just part of a relationship in a very tumultuous time?
I mean, I think there's several ways to look at this. One is that it's just a great relationship, and things got worked up and got excited, and then Trump and Netanyahu exchanged blows. Trump got even angrier and said some words that you don't say on the news usually. And that's one way to look at it. Another way to look at it is slightly more complex and higher up, which is that on the Lebanese topic, Israel and the United States are not exactly aligned. And I'll say it this way. The United States has a huge interest in having an agreement with Iran. For Trump, for internal political reasons, in the Middle East, when it comes to building up the brand of the United States once more, sort of the regional superpower, the policeman of the region, the one that brought down the Ayatollah regime, an agreement at the end of which there is an open Strait of Hormuz, and the Gulf states can all stand and have a big ceremony and applaud President Trump. That's an important win for President Trump. Israel can live without an agreement. That's important to state. Israel can't live with Hezbollah and our fences up north. And that's sort of where Israel and the U.S. differ on this topic. Iran is a distant threat. It's not immediate. It's not imminent, at least not today. But Lebanon is immediate. It's daily. It's omnipresent unless it's dealt with. And in Israel, we have a very, very clear understanding right now that there's a clock that's running out of time when it comes to dealing with Hezbollah. We're nowhere near a situation where a diplomatic solution will resolve Hezbollah. The Lebanese government and army are still far too weak, and Hezbollah is still far too strong for us to just withdraw and say we'll be good. We won't be good. We can't allow Hezbollah terrorists back on our fences. We have cities up north that are within walking distance of the border. The Lebanese have cities filled with Shias who support Hezbollah, and some of them Hezbollah terrorists that are within walking distance, short walking distance, not a hike, in your flip-flops to the Israeli border. And we can't allow them to come back and sit on our borders once more. And because of that reality, we have a sense of urgency right now. The IDF has upped the war tempo against Hezbollah. Hezbollah itself feels the same pressure of everyone wanting to wrap all of this up and says, no, I want to get some victory images over here and come after Israel, get whatever targets I can, get whatever images, whatever kills, sadly, they can of both IDF and Israeli civilians. And Trump and Netanyahu are not exactly on the same page on that topic in the sense of the long-term agenda. One last thing is I want to say this, if people have doubts at home when they watch these things, from an Israeli perspective, from here where I'm standing in Jerusalem, President Trump has been the best friend Israel has ever had in modern times. And that's not an exaggeration. That man led an army to fight alongside Israel, not once, but twice in 12 months against the biggest villain of our lifetime. I mean, that's no small feat. Many people have shied away from that. Many U.S. presidents have shied away from doing the things Trump has done for Israel. Embassy, recognition of Golan Heights, many, many, many other diplomatic issues, financial issues that have to do with support and aid to Israel. And Iran is the biggest achievement that Trump has had in the relationship with Israel and in standing up against evil. And I think whatever phone call happened and how it happened between him and Netanyahu, that's nothing. That's a bump in the road of a very substantial and meaningful alliance between two historical caliber leaders. And again, this is not about them as people. This is what they're doing right now in history, fighting against Iran. And we need to remember that.
Mati, very well said. And that's why I keep saying, look, President Trump, based on his first term and so far his second term, how he's handled Iran, he certainly deserves the benefit of the doubt, I think, here as this Iran situation unfolds. Yair, you've spent a lot of time in Lebanon as a member of the Israel Defense Forces Reserve, as Mati is as well. But your impressions of Hezbollah right now, look, they seemed defanged largely, Yair, for a good period of time. And now, on a daily basis, rockets and drones flying out of Lebanon once again, even though yesterday this deal was apparently negotiated in D.C., where the Lebanese government's going to help push Hezbollah back beyond the Litani River. But who knows when that'll be. And in the meantime, Hezbollah's firing away.
Yeah, definitely, Eric. So let's just break it down to what's happening on the ground. The IDF is already controlling deep into South Lebanon. The IDF is destroying terrorist infrastructure that is endangering the Israeli civilians on the Golan Heights, on the northern part of Israel. The IDF is building new security zones on the mountain ridge of the Beaufort, which is like this high mountain that can see deep into Lebanon. So on the ground, the IDF, from a military perspective, is winning, no question asked. But Hezbollah has two aces up its sleeves. One of them is the suicide drones, and specifically the optic cable-controlled suicide drone that is a very, very hard to detect and very disruptive weapon that the IDF did not find a way to deal with so far. So what it is this drone that is with this little optical cable. It's very quiet, and it explodes on the IDF troops and, sadly, on the Israeli civilians. So when Israel signs an agreement for a ceasefire in Lebanon with Lebanon, Hezbollah is not part of this agreement. And immediately throughout that night, they opened fire towards the northern communities of Israel. So this is something that Israel needs to deal with. And the hard part is that Trump and Iran are using the negotiations, or the so-called negotiations, to block Israel from carrying out strategic attacks against the leadership of Hezbollah in Beirut, the capital of Lebanon. So again, Israel is fighting with one head tied behind our backs. But the good thing is that we are still winning this fight. We will find the technological way to get rid of these suicide drone threat. And one last thing, Eric, Hezbollah is not just fighting against Israel. Hezbollah launched a suicide drone, multiple of them, against a United Nations post in South Lebanon, murdering one United Nations peacekeeping personnel and wounding two others. So this is not just a terrorist organization that is dealing solely with Israel. They're attacking the Lebanese government, threatening the prime minister and the leadership of Lebanon. They're carrying out attacks against the United Nations in Lebanon, and they're attacking Israeli soldiers and civilians. So this is bigger than just an Israel-Hezbollah war. And I think that the world needs to back Israel up to finish the job here.
Amen.
Because we don't want them closer to our border, stronger.
Guys, look, we broke down Iran. We broke down Lebanon, Hezbollah, the situation there. One issue that hasn't been talked about a lot over the past few months, but it's still looming, is Hamas in Gaza. And they have yet to disarm. Yair, give us an update there. What's the situation? Hamas kind of laying low right now. The Gaza situation not on the front burner with Iran and Lebanon, of course, but Hamas is still there, severely weakened, of course, but they're still armed. What's the next step there? Is there a next step there?
Well, let's talk about it from Hamas' point of view. They're not weakened. They have been recruiting since day one of the ceasefire agreement. So they have an extra 40,000 new terrorists from the ages of 13th and up to 16th. And they are testing the borders every single day. They are sending kids and scouts to the IDF positions to test response time, to test the IDF's awareness. And the IDF is conducting close to daily activities of fighting with terrorists, either in terror tunnels or in these sort of encounters that the Hamas terrorists are trying to test the borders. And then internally, inside the Gaza Strip, Hamas is gaining more and more control because every single day you have around 600 aid trucks that enter through Israel, by the way, with humanitarian aid that goes straight to the Hamas's hands, and then they sell it to their own population to gain more weapons, more power, more money, and more control over their own people. And they do the same thing in the political system. Gaza had elections for the small cities inside Gaza, and guess who won most of these seats? Yes, Hamas affiliates. So Hamas is preparing for the next round of fighting and getting stronger and stronger. And if we don't deal with this situation, and Israel is dealing by taking out their leadership, then they'll keep just being stronger for the next fight.
Yeah, guys, let's face it, Hamas, Hezbollah, the Iranian regime, they're not going to disarm unless they are forcibly disarmed. So we'll see what the next few weeks and months bring on that end. Mati, here's one for you I know you'll love. You are a very astute political analyst. And look, elections in Israel, we got the midterms here in America in November, but elections in Israel scheduled for October. Perhaps they'll be called even earlier. And Prime Minister Netanyahu, once again, look, Naftali Bennett and Yair Lapid have formed an alliance there, and they'll be running their party as well against Bibi's Likud party. What do you see going forward? I know it's early. We're several months out, of course, from October, but how are things looking right now on the Israeli political scene with this election looming?
Well, you know, we say in Hebrew, prophecies given, what the Bible says, prophecies given to the fools, but let's try and guesstimate what can happen. One, Netanyahu is a very, very powerful adversary for anyone who's running against him, and he's not at all over. That's important to note here. Not only that, any election that happens here in Israel is always tight. It's always close. It's always depending on just a couple heads, with very rare exceptions in recent decades. I want to say this, in Israel, give or take, about half the non-Orthodox and non-Arab population, they're not necessarily secular, but half the non-Orthodox, non-Arab population, they split between semi-supporting Netanyahu and the Likud and semi-supporting other parties, let's call them all the central parties. And in that sense, there's this really fine balance of who can form a coalition. That's always the challenge here. Netanyahu never has half the House. He always has some of the seats, and then he has to form an alliance. And I think a lot of the outliers that are not even the biggest parties, they often, well, and usually in Israel, they determine the outcome of the election, depending on who they're willing to form an alliance with. The Ben Gvirs of Israel, for instance, those kind of parties, the more harder right-wing national Orthodox parties are the ones that determine where things are going. And I want to say this, in Israel, there's some very, very, very serious underlying tensions that are still running through the public. The blame and the responsibility for what happened in October 7th, let's call it the judiciary revolution that Netanyahu's party started just before this war began, when they were sworn in as a government. And the biggest, hottest topic in Israel right now is related to the Orthodox recruitment, which is something that's a historical issue that's once again coming to a boiling point. I think, and I think the next month or two are going to be dominated by a discussion of what happens with the Orthodox. The Orthodox parties, if I can just talk about that for a sec, the Orthodox parties in Israel are pushing Netanyahu to put in legislation the fact that they don't have to serve in the IDF. This is a hot topic after almost 3 years of war for most Israelis, myself included, Yair included. This is a topic that we're willing to go to elections over time and time again. And the opinions in the Israeli public are angry and are strong on this topic on every side. And Netanyahu's next reign, whether or not that happens, might actually depend on nothing that has to do with Iran, nothing that has to do with the war, but whether or not he gives in to the Orthodox demands, and they are putting the squeeze on him. This is dominating Israeli news in recent days, including riots by the ultra-Orthodox, making sure that they're not recruited into the army. This is a very internal Israel issue, but the identity of the Israeli prime minister going forward after that elections, that is something of regional and international magnitude. Netanyahu, you can say many things about him. What he's been able to do in recent years when it comes to the war, I'm obviously not talking about the opening days of the war. October 7th, that was a failure on Israel's behalf. But what happened afterwards, especially the wars in Lebanon against Hezbollah, the multiple wars against Iran, that was done under very strong leadership, both in Israel and in the United States. And the identity of Israel's next prime minister, that affects the shape, the face, the security of the Middle East for many years after that to come.
Yeah, no doubt. Mati, great breakdown. And look, at the end of the day, with the ultra-Orthodox, you've got thousands and thousands of young, able-bodied, military-aged men in a time of war, and they're not serving in the military. That is
hundreds of thousands.
Yeah,
right.
Hundreds of thousands.
Hundreds of thousands.
Yeah, I mean, it is a massive, massive problem, as you just laid out. Yair, all that said, tumultuous time, of course, for the nation of Israel. About a minute left, my friend. Talk about the morale in Israel overall right now. To me, Israel is strong, getting stronger, and from what I see, the attitude is positive overall and optimistic for the future, despite all the madness in the region and the rise of anti-Semitism around the world.
Yeah, listen, I think that God is using Israel today to show the world that he's still faithful. And how he's doing that, we are under attack from 7 different fronts. We're still here. After 3 years of war, the Israeli economy, the stock markets in Israel are just going up. The Israeli currency, the shekel, has never been as strong compared to the international euro or the dollar around the world. You know, Israeli defense companies are selling at $20 billion per year our defense systems that were proven against all the rockets of the enemies. And there are talks of the Abraham Accords reigniting with Saudi Arabia and with more countries signing deals with Israel. So yes, there are lots of reasons to be happy. And I think that we need to praise God for being faithful and for being able to turn a rough situation into an amazing testimony that he's in control.
Amen. The God of Israel, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, neither slumbers nor sleeps. And I think once the dust settles, guys, with Iran, its proxies, and the wars and rumors of war, once the dust settles, Yair, as you said, great days lie ahead for Israel. I mean, the good things, I think, are on the horizon for Israel and the region, but the Iranian regime, for now, stands in the way. But hopefully that changes very, very soon. Yair, Mati, great stuff, guys, as always. Toda Rabbah. Thank you very much. God bless, gentlemen. We will see you again soon. And, folks, again, boots on the ground, seen on TBN every Thursday night, 9:30 p.m. Eastern Time. Great on-the-ground perspective, like you just heard from Mati and Yair every week. You won't want to miss that. And the TBN Israel channel. Now, you love the Watchman channel here, of course, on YouTube, but the TBN Israel channel, absolutely amazing. Again, more content from on the ground in Israel, giving that unique boots-on-the-ground perspective, Mati and Yair. So you'll want to subscribe there as well. Hey, a lot going on, and I think we talked about President Trump earlier. I think it's key with President Trump. His words are one thing, but you need to watch his actions. We've talked about this before here on the live stream and on the newscast. In the run-up to Midnight Hammer, Operation Midnight Hammer last June, and in the run-up to Operation Epic Fury in late February of this year, in both instances, President Trump was saying, look, we want peace. We want a deal. We don't want to start any military action against Iran's regime. And literally 24 hours later, he launched military action against Iran's regime. So I think President Trump, intentionally with his rhetoric many times, is keeping the enemy, he keeps all of us, but he's keeping the enemy off balance, keeping Iran's regime guessing, kind of lulls them to sleep. And as soon as they think, okay, we're off the hook, Trump won't dare strike us, Trump turns around and he strikes. I hope, personally, that's what we're seeing right now. Because, look, at the end of the day, as Mati, Yair, and I just broke down, Iran's regime will not disarm. They will not yield. Their ideology demands jihad. And that's the bottom line. And what they will do, if the can is kicked down the road here by the current administration here in the U.S., what Iran's regime, or what's left of it, will do is they'll wait until early 2029 when President Trump leaves office, and they will resume a jihad and arming their proxies, the ballistic missile stockpiles rebuilt, the nuclear program, the uranium will be churning, being enriched once again. We know this. So my final word on this, finish the job. The regime has never been weaker than it is right now. It's teetering on the brink of collapse. Push them over the cliff and into the ash heap of history. where they belong. Hey, thanks so much for joining us. Until next time, God bless you, and we'll see you soon.
Hey everyone, thanks for checking out the Watchman Newscast. Make sure you hit the subscribe button so you never miss an upload, and tap the bell icon so you're notified every time a new video is posted. And don't forget to share your thoughts, insights, and comments below. Thanks for watching. We'll see you back here tomorrow.